Everyone has to do
Si vous ne savez pas ce que vous consommez,
everything they can
ne le consommez pas.
in order to make sure they are on the right side of history.
Consommateur engagé, aujourd'hui, c'est un boulot à plein temps.
84% de coton de la Chine, elles viennent de la région ouïghour.
Posez-vous la question de savoir ce qu'il y a dans les vêtements.
La fast fashion, c'est un vieux nuggets pourri.
C'est nous qui dessinons aussi le monde de demain.
There's another way of living on this planet. Change your minds, you guys.
Bienvenue dans Nouveau Modèle, le podcast sur la mode responsable et engagée. Je suis Chloé Cohen, je suis journaliste et dans ce podcast, je donne la parole à des femmes qui font bouger les lignes de l'industrie textile. Qu'elles soient stylistes, entrepreneuses, activistes ou encore mannequins, ces femmes partagent ici leur parcours, leurs valeurs et dévoilent les coulisses d'une industrie en pleine mutation. Parce qu'elles ont pris conscience des dérives sociales et environnementales de la mode, elles ont décidé de s'engager pour un monde féministe, inclusif et durable. Cette semaine, je reçois Anna Yona, la co-fondatrice de la marque allemande Wildling Shoes, qui conçoit des chaussures minimalistes. Avec Anna, nous avons parlé de mode régénérative. Car peut-on se satisfaire de diminuer notre impact sur la planète et les êtres humains ? Ne doit-on pas aujourd'hui penser aux générations futures et tenter d'avoir un impact positif pour l'agriculture, la biodiversité, la protection du climat ou encore la justice sociale ? Par exemple, la chaussure Eagle de la marque, fabriquée en coton biologique et teinture végétale, est le fruit d'une collaboration avec des femmes au chômage au Kirghizistan afin de leur redonner la possibilité de travailler. C'est un impact positif. Cet épisode a été enregistré en anglais dans le cadre d'une collaboration avec The Conscious Festival, un événement festif et pédagogique sur la transition écologique qui se tiendra au Grand Contrôle à Paris du 30 septembre au 2 octobre 2022. En attendant de vous y croiser, je vous souhaite une très belle écoute et je remercie Wildling Shoes de soutenir Nouveau Modèle. Hello Anna, thank you very much for your time. So maybe first, to start our conversation, could you present yourself, your background, and how and why you decided to create your brand?
Hello, Chloe. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Yes, I'm Anna. I am a mother of 3 kids and an entrepreneur. We founded our own business in 2015, me and my husband. And we make minimal shoes, shoes that allow you to walk like you're barefoot. And we did that because we couldn't find shoes for our own kids. But it also became a lot more. So we're very busy with defining a new way of doing business, actually, of transforming the economy and of being part of that transformation. So that's what I'm mainly busy with at the moment.
That's a big project, and we will talk about it in details during the podcast. So when did you learn about the negative impacts of fashion on the planet and for the people?
Well, I've always been interested in sustainability topics. It was actually already a topic at home. My parents founded the Green Party in the region where I lived. So that was frequently, like, it was talk at the dinner table, like what's going on in the world. So that was always something that was with me. But then there was quite some time in which, I studied, I did other things. And then when the kids were born, that really became an issue again, like a very pressing issue, actually, to worry about what is happening in the world and about their future, of course, as well, but also about what's happening right now everywhere. So when we founded the business, that was really one of the things that we were very sure about. That was one of our principles, that we cannot make a product for families, for people, for kids, and at the same time go on destroying the planet while doing so, or also the livelihoods of other people. So that very soon became a topic for us. And I think then we delved into it more and more. Like we started, just thinking about, okay, what could be a sustainable material to use? And then you look deeper and you look deeper and you find more and more and more of what's going on and what is so going terribly wrong. So in the beginning, it was mainly, what are the right materials? What is the right way of dyeing a fabric? How can we produce in a way that it will be fair, at least according to, standards? How can we produce in Europe? Like these kind of questions. But I think from there on, it became something much bigger, like really understanding that the whole system is completely rotten at the core. Like the whole system just really does not work. Like the structures that have been built up are completely wrong. So from there, I think we got to the point that we said, okay, this actually needs a real transformation. It's not just patching it up at some point.
Yeah, when you start digging into fashion, you realize the impacts are really big, and you need to find solutions step by step. So I imagine you are still trying to improve all you are doing. So
yes, absolutely.
And that's a question I found very interesting, and I found it in the presentation of your values on the website, I think. So I wanted to ask it to you. Why does Wildling Shoes exist, and what do you want to achieve?
Mm-hmm. Well, it exists really because we found out that we saw that there were no shoes that our kids would want to wear, because they grew up barefoot in their first years of their lives. And then when we tried to put shoes on their feet, they really didn't want to wear them. So that was kind of just a very personal problem. But then we started digging into it, and then we saw, okay, this is actually, it's a bigger problem. Like many, many, many people have problems with their feet, like have health issues because of the kind of shoes that we wear. And we wanted to change that. So we started developing shoes without really knowing how to do that. Like we didn't have a background in product design or anything. But I think that really helped us to look at a product from a new perspective. But once we had this product, and once this was kind of working, and we had more and more customers, we kind of also thought, okay, we really need something to do with this business. Like this has to be here for more than just creating a product that we stand behind, that we think is a valuable and a necessary product, but we need to do more. So how can we use the enterprise? How can we use our team? How can we use this energy and also the money to really drive transformation? And as you said before, this is huge. It's a huge topic. There's, of course, like we're under no impression that we can achieve anything by ourselves. So it's really also about reaching out, working with others, with other companies, with activists, with politicians, with like whoever comes our way and is willing to work on change, on transformation, like to hook up with these people, to share knowledge, and to really start creating something better together.
And you say also on your website and in your values that you are part of the regeneration. Can you explain what you mean exactly by that?
Well, there are two words in there, regeneration and also generation. I think this generation is really faced with enormous challenges. The challenge of climate change, the challenge of great like social injustice. So, these problems are very much like intricately like intertwined. Like we cannot solve either one like without solving it all together. Like we need to really have a holistic view at these things. So like we're the generation that actually is pressed to do something right now. We don't have much time. So I think that's how we understand ourselves. Like we're part of this generation that now needs to stand up and act and change things so that they will not get worse and worse, but that we can actually try to hold some of these trends and try to create a livable future while also hopefully creating a livable present for the people and the environment that we touch. And the other word in there is regeneration, of course. And that's because we believe that mere sustainability may no longer be enough. It may no longer be sufficient because the status quo that we've arrived at is really bad. So just trying, to avoid causing harm or to cause as little harm as possible is no longer enough. So instead of course, this is very important. I mean, to reduce the harm that we are causing. on a social and an ecological level is very important. But we also need to check and see, is there anything positive that we can do? Can we have a positive impact? Like, how can we improve the lives of people that we're working with? How can we improve the situation that we found? Like, how can we, for example, in cultivation projects, how can we restore soil health so that actually soil will be in better health every year, and not get worse consecutively? So I think that kind of view at a situation will always add something positive that you can do. And that really gives us a lot of energy, because it's not only looking at, at the negative balance, like, okay, where can we reduce harm? How can we reduce emissions, for example? How can we reduce chemicals? How can we reduce, things that are going wrong? But also to see, how can we provide something positive? How can we create better workplaces? How can we create more biodiversity? How can we create more diversity in our own team? Like all of these things. So that really gives us a lot of energy and hope, because it's something positive to look at.
Yeah, that's very interesting to see how you are trying to have a positive impact, because we always talk about how to reduce the negative impacts of fashion, but not how we can make the future a better place to live in. So that's a link with my next question. Could you talk more about that program of regenerative agriculture, and why it's so important to you to add that in your brand, in the core values of your brand?
Mm-hmm. Yes, happily. Well, there's, if we look into value creation, of course, there are many, many, many stages. The cultivation, the processing of the fiber, the textile making, the creation of the product, the life cycle, repairs, recycling, like all of these stages of the life cycle of the product, I think are extremely important to look at. And in each stage, to reduce the harm and to add benefits, like a positive impact. And we think that especially in the first stage, like in the cultivation, there is a huge opportunity for a positive impact. If we go, for example, and we create regional systems of regenerative agriculture, growing our fiber, like the fiber needed for the shoes or for the textiles, then we can really, really create a positive impact in terms of, for example, having a better soil health. So there will be more carbon stored in the ground. There will be more water kept in the ground. There will be wind protection. There will be a greater diversity of plants planted. These systems are more resilient. So it's also better, like future perspectives for the farmers themselves. So there's a lot of positive things we can do if we change the way we cultivate the earth. So that's why this has become one key thing for us to look into, like to really purchase and cultivate all of our fibers in systems that will have a positive impact. And we often try to combine this with rewilding aspects. So either with a cooperation with Rewilding Europe, who are very big in rewilding places in Europe. Like, we like that it's local, that we're looking at nature here in Europe. And we also think that this is one of the most important counterparts to what is being destroyed by climate change, because we need these intact ecosystems for biodiversity and also for like as a resilience factor that can help against climate change. So we usually try to combine this in projects that you have some rewilding areas, and then next to them you have regenerative agriculture. And we think that this goes really well together and can create a really resilient and livable region.
Yeah. And I would like to talk more about your shoes now. Maybe first with the materials. Can you talk about all the materials you use in your shoes? Because it's very interesting and very different from other brands. So I'm very curious about all of that?
Well, shoes are really complex. So there's a lot more than in garments usually. Like you have a lot more materials. So we have the outsole, and that is made of synthetic rubber and cork and silica. So those are the three materials that go into our outsole. And we are working with synthetic rubber because it has a very high quality. So it kind of lasts for a long time. And we can also use at least half of that as recycled materials already. And we're trying to work on these percentages. So this outsole, like 20% is recycled rubber, 20% is recycled cork. I'm sorry, then we have, I think, 20% silica, and the rest is rubber. And out of that, half of it is recycled. Okay. So we can actually already now recycle these outsoles into new outsoles. So we can repair our shoes, or shoes that, can no longer be worn. We can take off the outsoles and we can recycle them into our own product life cycle. So that's something that we've been working on in the last months and year. And it's really great because that's been a huge step forward to a more sustainable and a more circular product. And then we're using a lot of natural materials for the upper part of the shoe. So we use wool that is usually sourced from grazing projects. So they're sheep that graze like biospheres. So this also has a rewilding aspect in it, or a biodiversity benefits. And some of these supply chains are very local. So we have a 150 kilometer supply chain cycle in Portugal, where we also can source the wool, we can wash it, we can process it, and also later work it into a textile and then into the shoes. So this is something that we're working on right now to establish this supply chain. Okay. And we'll have it in our products from next year. And then we have things like hemp and linen and cotton and different natural fibers. And all of these we want to source from regenerative agricultural projects in the future. So at least one project per material is something that we're working on right now. And then we have some materials in the shoes that we're not really happy with right now. So one is the membrane that we use in winter shoes. It's made from polyester, and we really don't want it. We don't want the plastic in the shoes. Okay. So we're trying to eliminate it, but therefore we're working on a different development of an outsole in order to make this possible, so that you can still wear the shoe in wet conditions. You won't get wet, but you can still wear it without the plastic. And then there's microfiber also. It's an element that we're still using for quality reasons and also for water protection reasons. And we're also working to eliminate this. So we have quite a few shoes already this spring, summer, and also in autumn, especially in spring, summer, that are textile only in the top part. Working this towards fully repairable and also recyclable product is one of the main goals.
Okay, that's really interesting. And why did you choose these materials over instead of others? Because it's very rare to find hemp or cork in shoes. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, actually, you're totally right. Like the shoe industry is a lot about performance. Like the materials have to be cheap, but they also have to be very durable. It's a product that is really used and abused, and it really needs to stand some wear and tear. So it was really difficult in the beginning to find alternatives, and we actually had to go to different areas of the industry, like to let's say furniture or bags, or other products that would be similar, in order to find materials that we could use. So we're opting for these materials because we really believe in fibers that can be grown locally and regionally. That's also why we're replacing quite a lot of our cotton with, let's say, hemp and linen and other fibers that can be sourced in Europe. Because I think actually there's a lot of potential in there. If we cultivate them the right way, if we build these decentralized networks, if we bring back the manufacturing to Europe. And that's actually something that we're working on with a great cooperative from France. They're called Virgo Co-op, and they're working on a local hemp supply chain. So we really need to bring this back, because this has all been, outsourced to Asia and to other places. And I think there is a lot of sustainability in the regional aspects and in the network that can be built up. The short supply chains, and also new future perspectives also for, let's say, rural European places.
Yeah.
So, and I think there are quite a few options to recycle these fibers too. For example, wool is quite easily recyclable. We believe that we want to work with a natural material. Like, we don't want to go into like technical material life cycles, and rather stay with a natural fiber.
Okay, yeah, I understand. And the second part of that question is, who make the shoes and where? You talked about Portugal, but how did you choose your partners and everything?
Well, the partners we try to choose, there are two things that are important. We try to work with local partners, like European partners, because it's much easier to get to know each other, because the second part is that we work with people that we love. So that's always, I think that's such a great indicator for like both, like who will it be fun to work with? Who can you rely on? Who can you trust? But also who shares the same wavelength, who shares the same principles and ideals. So, it's much easier to get to know people, of course, if you can visit them. And if you I really want to be able to visit our production sites and to see firsthand what's going on there. And so that's why we chose to stay in Europe. And even though we're in Europe, I think there's a lot of work to be done still. I think that there's, the working conditions and factories need to be much improved. I think it needs to be work that is fun, and that is better paid. So I think we have a lot of work together with our partners, but you also need a partnership first in order to be able to talk about these things and then to create new concepts. So yes, the shoes are made in Portugal. We work with several factories that have been they are family owned businesses usually that have been running for quite a few generations. And also we try to be like in first-hand contact and touch with all the other people too, like with the factories that make our textiles, and even with the people who grow the raw materials. We're not there yet. Like, we don't have full transparency over our supply chains yet. But I think for the most important materials that we use the most, like, we really have a very good overview.
That's great. And you're working on it. I mean, it's always a process, and it takes time to have full transparency and traceability over everything. So that's a good start. And if I'm not wrong, the brand is German, right?
Yes.
Yes. So that's a question I will add, if you don't mind. But what is the situation of sustainable fashion and of fashion in Germany? Mm-hmm. What are the legislations and maybe the minds of consumers regarding sustainable fashion? What can you say about because I think maybe it's different from France, just to have some clues about how it's going, and is the government trying to improve fashion in Germany, or just to have some informations?
Well, I think there's growing interest in, first of all, the consumer area. I think people are already very far when it comes to, where does my food come from? What am I eating here? But I'm starting to see the same interest also in the fashion area, like to really, that people really want to know where does this come from? Who made this? What are the conditions? And to start to understand much more about the complications behind supply chains and value creation. So I think that the climate is changing in terms of that people are getting more interested in it. They get more aware of a lot of things. They demand more transparency. They are not very likely to let a brand get away with a lot of things. So I think there's at least one part of the consumer world, and I think that's probably the target group that we cater to too. So that are very aware, and they really want to know what's going on. Of course, you also have the other side. You have the very cheap productions, the big fashion labels, the push marketing, and a lot of people that are stuck in that cycle. And I think that also, that are manipulated to be part of this kind of vicious cycle, because I think it's built on a lot of injustices, including like making people feel bad about, how they look or what they need to wear in order to be part of the crowd. So, I think that's probably very similar to other European countries. And the part of the legislation and the politics, also there, we see more and more awareness and more willingness also to slowly, create the frameworks. So we're actually part of some networks that are pushing for harsher legislation regarding supply chain transparency. Also, not only, that we have a law that requires companies to have that transparency and to take responsibility for their supply chains, but it's only from a certain amount of employees. So I think this should also be true for smaller companies. And then there's a big focus on circularity. Also, seeing that we need to, reuse resources and create less waste. So I hope that there will be more of a push for that. And there's also now starting to be some focus on greenwashing, like to have to make it illegal to just state something that is simply not true, to make you look better and greener. So things are moving, and I think some companies are feeling the pressure, also regarding, the emissions and the CO2 tax. I think, some things are changing. In my view, this is far from enough, and it's also not fast enough. So I think we need companies that go ahead and also show politics and other companies that it's possible, that we can do this and that we need to do this.
Yeah, I agree. we need companies like yours, obviously, to show the way to improve everything. And so I have two more questions for you. The first one is, what are the projects of Wildling Shoes in the future, near future and in long-term future?
Well, this is always such a big question. I always feel like we really try to tackle things from a more holistic perspective. So it always also feels like there are tons of construction sites and tons of things that we want to do at the same time. And sometimes that feels incredibly slow, the progress. And at the same time, I think it's the right way to go, because you can't do one thing without the other. So one big thing for us is how to create like a more human-centered workplace. I think we have made some progress there, but I think that's always like improving our company culture, bringing in more equity and more diversity. So like a safe space where people really have fun working, like that's a very important thing for us. The other thing is to get our product circular, like fully circular. So that will be some work, because also some solutions are just not in place yet. So that's a big thing, a big issue. And I mean circular also in terms of like a positive impact along each stage of the supply chain. And then, we want to contribute to rewilding projects, because we think they're really important. But that's more of like in terms of volunteering and also the one or the donation. And I think the probably the biggest thing that we're working on is a transformation of the economy. And of course, we're not working on this by ourselves. We're hooking up with other companies and activists and other people to really find and define new ways of doing business, like to change things on a structural level, like to really redefine how we want to live and how we want to act, also as a company, in order to transform society. So that's a really, really big goal. And we know that we're just a very, very small fish in this, but we're very active in getting together with others and to really to push forward on that area. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's so important. So, okay, let's we will watch everything and we'll see how you're doing in the future then. And the question I ask in all the episodes to conclude the discussion: do you have role models?
I'm really bad in, following just one specific person or the other. I think there are so many inspirational people out there. I think it's much more in the small things, or, there's a book you read and you take something away from there. There's a friend you talk to and you go home really inspired. So I look at this more in terms of, like, let's create a network, or let's be something like an ecosystem that, gives and takes and inspires like each other. And that's probably the situation in which I'm most happy. Like, if I can be surrounded with, like-minded people, that are all, doing something, that are not just, sitting there and kind of despairing, because I think it's very easy to despair right now. But to just go and say, yes, we can do it. And somebody goes one step, and from that you get energy and hope, and then you go another, and you can inspire someone to do the same. So I think in that, in the fact that we're actually really many, many, many people that want change, and meaningful change, I take a lot of inspiration and hope from that.
Okay. That's great. Thank you so much for all the answers and for that podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chloe. I hope there was not too much noise in the background, because
no, it was perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Merci à Anna d'avoir participé à cet épisode de Nouveaux modèles, et merci à Thomas Langlin, notre ingénieur du son. Si vous aimez l'émission, dites-le moi avec des mots doux et des étoiles sur vos applications préférées, et parlez-en autour de vous. C'est ce qui m'aide le plus à faire connaître le podcast. Pour ne louper aucun épisode, rejoignez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux @nouveaumodèle.podcast. Je vous dis à très bientôt pour rencontrer un nouveau modèle.